This one, number 6, is by far one of my favorite. I won't call it a tool this time. One of my favorite instruments of project management is called a lessons learned register. Now, in your firm, you need to push this. Why? Because if you're not collecting lessons learned, one, you're going downhill, as in to the dark zone of ignorance across the firm. And secondly, you're hemorrhaging equity, sweat equity. Why would Joe, working on a project in New York, have made tremendous mistakes, huge mistakes? And I, the project manager in LA, 3 months later, is making exactly the same set of mistakes. Why should that happen? It is happening in many firms because they do not espouse the digital nervous system of lessons learned, to borrow a phrase coined by Bill Gates. When I think of a digital nervous system of lessons learned in New York should be able to permeate all of the other offices by virtue of sensible knowledge share using a process in this book called Manage Project Knowledge. What is Manage Project Knowledge? Manage Project Knowledge, a process where this lessons learned is created, is concerned primarily with two things. One, the creation of new knowledge. In other words, lessons learned on the project. You're creating knowledge regarding that. What kind of knowledge? Good practices, home runs and wins, things that you did well that you should absolutely be doing on every project. Secondly, you want to capture those things that you should never in your life, in a million years, catch anyone in the firm doing. Now, the problem with a lot of firms is they have some lessons learned document, but no one is using that knowledge. It's like having a pot of gold, sitting on the pot of gold or digging a hole and throwing it in and forgetting all about it. That is what lack of the execution of the managed project knowledge process could do. So for you project managers, whether you are preparing to take a professional exam from the PMI or not, you should be managing project knowledge. You should be identifying the great minds present on the project, and you should be a catalyst, an enabler of knowledge creation. And then you want to harness that knowledge. Put that knowledge in the lessons learned register. But like I said, that is not what a lot of people struggle with. What a lot of people struggle with is the use of the knowledge. So follow me to chapter 4 in integration and page 98. Manage project knowledge. Let's read it. It says, manage project knowledge, where this is created, is the process of using existing knowledge and creating new knowledge. Did you see that the use of knowledge came first? It is important to use what exists. Be aware of what exists. You might be reinventing the wheel, so be aware of what exists and then create new knowledge afterwards to achieve the project's objectives. But not just that. Watch the follow-on statement that a lot of organizations are missing. And contribute to It didn't say project learning, organizational learning, organization-wide. People are hemorrhaging value, hemorrhaging sweat equity because they are not harnessing and utilizing the lessons learned. They have a very poor system or no system. They dump them in Word docs that cannot be well searched, cannot be well cataloged, and often go into a black hole. I was training a firm a few weeks ago. They said, Phil, this is one of the areas we do the worst in. We're good at what we do, but we're horrible when it comes to sharing these lessons learned. Collecting them isn't the problem. We do need a tool. Do you see? A lot of firms have this issue. Now, if you're getting ready for the exam, you got to know that the lessons learned registers across many different projects are going to be funneled ultimately into the lessons learned repository. Were you aware of that? The lessons learned repository is an organizational process asset update. So in closed project or phase, if you are aware of the PMP guide, that is where the lessons learned ultimately go for archiving into the lessons learned repository, and ultimately it becomes part of the OPAs into the organization's corporate knowledge base, if you will. You got to understand the flow. Now, before we go, there are two important tools that are used to create this. Let's call them techniques. There are more techniques. The first one is called knowledge management. Connect who has the knowledge to who needs it, people to people. The second is information management. Connect the information and the person who needs it. Connect the person to the information. Where does the information reside? In a library somewhere. Where does knowledge reside? In people's minds, the great minds. So as a project manager, you want to marry up the mind that has the knowledge and the hungry mind that needs it. Communities of practice, networking, forums, those are ways. Interest groups, get those people to meet, to sync up. That's how tacit knowledge is shared. The knowledge that is hard to convey, that is the forum for it. Explicit knowledge can be readily codified and put into a library, an information system. And that's where information management comes in. So as a PM, your job is to connect people to knowledge, connect people to information, get those great minds to synergize. For your exam, in closing, pay close attention to the flow of the register, lessons learned register, into the lessons learned repository, and also the oddity of deliverables appearing here. What you do need to remember, deliverables is an input here because deliverables is a catch-all for many different things, some of which could be project management plan components, and some of which could be knowledge-oriented deliverables that are not particularly discussed in this process. I'll see you in the next video.